Thank you for joining the CRA News Channel. My name is Javier Manjarrez, and today we have with us veteran Republican consultant and strategist Roger Stone.
Javier, great to be with you.
Roger, recently on Stone Zone, you have penned a couple articles, one being called Crist Vulnerability. In it, you pen, Governor Charlie Crist, former Chief of Staff George Lemieux has made millions since leaving state government. Now Lemieux's business dealings are likely to become a focus of Democratic attacks on U.S. Senate candidate Charlie Crist. My question to you is, why would the Democrats focus on such business dealings? And can you explain a little bit more on his dealings with the Seminole Indian tribe? Well,
in essence, the Crist administration, in violation of the 1988 Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, has given the Seminole Indians a monopoly on gambling outside of Dade and Broward counties. Under the 1988 Act, the Indians are only eligible to conduct those games allowed by state law. In this case, that would be slot machines. Once the voters of Florida legalize slots for the tracts in Dade and Broward County, the Indians are eligible to negotiate with the state to conduct those games on their tribal land. However, the Crist administration, with George Lemieux as the major negotiator, went far beyond the 1988 Act, granting the Indians the right to extremely lucrative blackjack and 21 card games that are not allowed by Florida state law. So they violate both the state law and they violate the federal law. In return, the Indians have made giant contributions to the Republican Party of Florida. So I think there's a conflict there, and I think that there's a public interest. Why are we allowing the Indians to pay the smallest percentage of revenue of virtually any state where Indian gaming is conducted and to conduct illegal games? And what did the Indians contribute to the Republican Party? And what did the Republican Party pay to George Lemieux, the governor's chief of staff? I think those are all important public policy questions.
So you're saying the Republican Party paid George Lemieux, so was he on retainer, or was he?
He was paid at least $200,000 that show up in the reports of the Secretary of State by the Republican Party of Florida at the same time that the state was in negotiation with the Seminoles over a gambling compact where George was the chief negotiator. I think that's a very clear conflict.
Mutual benefits.
Okay.
You also state that George Lemieux has involvement in the mutual benefit scandal. We know that Joel Steiner was involved, and you also said that he was wearing a wiretap for the feds. Feds, I would assume, would be the FBI. What makes you think that Lemieux could be implicated in something as scandalous as that?
Well, first of all, I think we have to explain to your viewers that mutual benefits is a viatical insurance program, and it is one that was fraudulent and defrauded a number of people. At some point, this fellow Stenger, who went by several other names, by the way, turned state's evidence and wore a wire. And I think he entrapped a number of state officials, both Democrats and Republicans, in conversations about how to head off that investigation. I know that the U.S. attorney recused himself from this case because of George Lemieux's involvement. So I believe that story is yet to unfold. I think it's going to bring down a number of Florida politicians, mostly Democrats. But I think it is a potential vulnerability for Mr. Lemieux.
So basically, do you think George Lemieux could be implicated within the indictment?
You know, I don't have enough information to know, but like any good journalist, I have my sources, and I believe that there is something there. Again, I think the fact that a small handful of insiders made millions and millions of dollars on their relationships with the administration, when the governor talks about transparency, constantly talks about transparency, where's the transparency at the Republican Party of Florida? Hundreds of thousands of dollars racked up on an American Express bill, hundreds of thousands of dollars for luxury jet aircraft travel, hundreds of thousands of dollars in bar tabs and restaurant bills and five-star restaurants and spas. And frankly, the state reporting requirements are inadequate. They don't tell individual Republican donors like me, I've given money to RPOF, I'd like to know where my money went. Don't tell me it went to American Express. Tell me what the American Express card was used for. Now, we know that the governor had a card. We know that Speaker Sampson had a card. We knew that the Senate President had a card. We know that Jim Greer had a card. I think the donors have a right to know how their money was spent. And I think it could be very embarrassing to find out how hundreds of thousands of dollars were squandered. The other part of this is that there was money left in our federal account after the presidential election. So John McCain lost this state by 1 point, essentially, When there weren't enough yard signs, here in Miami-Dade, where I was working for McCain, we couldn't get material. We were told there was no more money. Yet when the election was over, we find out that RPOF has a surplus in their federal account. So it appears to me that Jim Greer undermined the McCain-Palin ticket right here in Florida.
Funny you say that, because the CRA actually donated McCain-Palin stickers that the CRA paid for because they ran out up in Broward County.
It's pathetic that we didn't have the materials we needed to win here for John McCain and Sarah Palin. We came very close. We could have carried Florida, but I think Chairman Greer shorted the effort.
Now, another thing I want to touch on is you also make another accusation of Lemieux double-dipping in the FCC railroad.
Well, shortly after George Lemieux left state service, left his position, his law firm was awarded an enormous contract to negotiate with the FEC Railroad. Specifically says that George Lemieux will be one of the lawyers charging the state $500 an hour. Lemieux says that was a discount price. I don't know that he's worth $500 an hour. And frankly, I think it's inappropriate to leave state government and take a big contract with you to represent the state in negotiations with the railroad. I think it's very fishy.
You're also hinting at another accusation, and I guess in an upcoming Stone Zone article, where you're calling it a chronology of bribery.
Well, again, I think we touched on this. During the time that the Seminoles and their development partner were in negotiations with the state, in the run-up to their negotiations with the state, they contributed very handsomely to the Republican Party of Florida, and there's no question that some of that money flowed through to George Lemieux. It is wholly inappropriate for the state to be negotiating with the Seminoles at the same time the Seminoles are donating to the party and the party is paying the chief negotiator. It is very clearly a conflict of interest.